Hello students, welcome to La Excellence. Welcome to our monthly session where we'll be focusing on Jan 2017. Till now, we have covered till December current affairs which is important from both prelims and mains. And whenever it comes to India Yearbook and Economic Survey, we have observed that till December whatever is required is already covered. But now it is important for us to focus from Jan onwards, where it is very important for us to look at certain issues in depth. As you are aware, majority of the questions in prelims, especially when it is related to current affairs, actually comes from Jan onwards. We cannot miss anything from Jan. We have to be very conscious, especially whenever I say current affairs, there is nothing called current affairs which is separated from your actual subjects. It's only in science and technology where you may come across some new terminologies, but if you actually try to understand those new terminologies as well, they are actually associated with the core subject. So here I want to tell you that it is very important for us not only to understand what has actually happened, but also some background and related information with respect to this. In our weekly magazines, we are actually providing the related information which may be beneficial for the students. But for Jan and Feb, as I have promised you, we'll try to ensure that most of the things along with background information which you can refer easily from your standard textbooks like Lakshmikant, Ramesh Singh or anything, will be telling you what exactly you have to look in that particular book, in that particular chapter, so that whenever a question comes, you will be in a position to answer it better. Until December, as I have already told you, we have tried our level best to go through most of the materials, not just the newspapers, but also available books in the market. And we have tried to compile some of the basic information and most important topics from all these sources. We have eliminated those which are not necessary from prelims point of view, at least for now, so that the students can easily rely on this topic and try to read as much as possible or revise as much as possible. So in exam, they can focus on these issues and write well. And when we come to Geography Through Maps video, most of the students are continuously requesting for that particular video. As I have told in several other previous videos, I'm telling it again now. Yes, we will be releasing it in June 1st or 2nd week. Most probably by June 3rd, we will be releasing it. We won't extend it till June 2nd week because we understand that students have to revise it. But why students want to see this particular video is mainly because usually we have seen that questions come from those videos. And we have been successful in predicting current affairs related geography through maps questions is mainly because we try to cover geography through maps or current affairs till the last few days of the exam as well. The video will be hardly for 1.5 hours. And even if you want to revise twice, it will not take more than 3 to 4 hours for you to look at that video specifically. And my intention is just to ensure that we understand what is the government plans in future days as well, so that we will be able to predict questions. Last year, we came to know that RCEP, TPP are the most important things that we need to focus. This year, if you're actually speaking at this point of time, it's very important for us to look at two important things. One, that is with respect to transport. We can think about connectivity across the world. That is One Belt, One Road initiative. And India is seriously considering the North-South initiative or North-South corridor. At the same time, it's very important for us to look at Israel and the borders of Israel. And most importantly, we also have to look at United States. So, because of these issues, I keep repeating again and again that we will try to ensure maximum questions come from our material. And I also want to tell you, not only for civil services, that is UPSC, even for state services, we have been successful in predicting most of the questions. If you look at Andhra Pradesh Civil Service exam, from our economic survey video itself, we got 4 to 5 questions directly, that too, whichever we have highlighted. And guys, as I have told you in those videos as well, that the language in which the question will be asked will be exactly what is there in the economic survey or India yearbook is proved again. That is, if you take those 5 questions which are actually there in the video, if we observe, the same language is actually used in the exam as well. Because of all these factors, we just want to tell you, whatever you are reading, trust the material, read carefully and revise them as much as possible so that you are actually in a position to clear this exam well. Right? So let's quickly begin with Jan current affairs. The first topic is actually related to polity, where we are looking at ordinance. Here, the Supreme Court has actually told recently that ordinance has to be placed before legislature. If you actually read Lakshmikant ordinance, you actually come to know that whenever an ordinance is passed, they say certain conditions, that is, the houses should not be in session. They also say that if even one house is in session but the other house is not in session, then also you can go for ordinance. But at the same time, they also say that once the session starts and when both the houses are in session, within 6 weeks' time, the ordinance has to be cleared. But unfortunately, most of the states, wherever they are going for these ordinances, they are not placing it before the legislature itself. Then once the legislature session ends, they are again repromulgating the ordinance. Supreme Court has said that this is gross violation of Constitution. Now here, let's see what type of questions actually come. UPSC may ask you, one, in state services they ask you ordinance comes under which article. UPSC standard is bit higher, where they may ask you under what circumstances ordinance can be issued is one. Second important thing, what are the problems associated with ordinance, misuse of ordinance. Then third, within what time ordinance has to be cleared. So these basic information with respect to ordinance is important. Second important thing, they may ask you with respect to difference between ordinance released by the executive of the central government and also the state government. So can this ordinance not be issued by the governor under any circumstances? If the bill, whatever is reserved, right, whichever has to be reserved for the president, if anything of that sort comes, then governor has a special role to play. So these kind of minute information with respect to ordinance is very, very important for you. So guys, please ensure that you are reading in Lakshmikant ordinance properly, right? So first topic that is important for us is ordinance. The next major issue which is actually important for us, which we have already seen in the magazine also, is with respect to urban local body elections in Nagaland. As you're aware, the Nagaland female literacy rate is much higher when compared to most of the states in other parts of the country. And the women there, they have actually asked for their rights. Nagaland initially was not actually part of the 11th schedule or so, but they have adopted it. And then they have adopted the 12th schedule as well. In panchayats and other areas, they have actually given the reservation that is required for women. But in urban local bodies, when it comes, they are actually saying that we are not willing to give this 33% as, according to Naga customary law, it is only male who have to rule. It's a typical patriarchal argument. But can we allow this patriarchal argument in a country when we are actually discussing about triple talaq and all? If we actually see, Naga customary law has to be allowed by the constitution itself according to Article 371A. As you are aware, we have Article 370 and 371 where certain exceptions are given to these states. When we see Article 370, Jammu and Kashmir, this year is important because of stone pelting and other crisis that is there. UPSC may not ask you anything about this controversial issue, but they may directly ask you with respect to the constitutional things associated with Article 370 of Jammu and Kashmir. That is one major thing that you need to focus this year. Then the second important thing is, if at all, a person who is actually planning to give a question from Article 371A, if he is going through Constitution, he may actually come across Article 370 and 371. When he is looking at 371, it is not only 371A, but it starts from 371 where we talk about Gujarat and Maharashtra, then Nagaland, then you have northeastern states, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, all these becomes important for us. So my request to you is, whenever we actually look at mains questions also, especially when it comes to ethics last year, we observed that from ARC report, when a question was actually asked, you can observe that from 2 consecutive pages in the book, 2 questions came. You never know that whenever a question is being planned to make from a particular topic, if they come across another important thing within that particular area, they may ask the related information as well. So my request to you is, first you have to look at Article 370, 371 completely, where you have to see A, B, C, D, E, F and all. And then you also have to look at urban local bodies where you will be focusing on 11th schedule and 12th schedule specifically. 11th schedule panchayats, PISA is also important, and we have always seen questions from PISA or from panchayats, but rarely we see questions from urban local bodies. But this year we actually come across a lot of issues which are associated with urban local bodies. So in polity, my request to you is, please try to read 2 important things. One is with respect to special states, and the second one is actually with respect to 12th schedule. At the same time, from geography point of view, my request to you is, please try to see what exactly is the definition of urban area. When it comes to population, it should be more than 5,000. 75% of the people, more than 75% of the people should be associated with non-agricultural work. So this type of data is very, very important for us to define urban areas. So from geography also, you have to look at urban areas carefully. Right guys? So with this, let's move quickly to the third topic, that is Mahanadi River dispute. It is actually between Chhattisgarh and Odisha. In polity, you have to focus on interstate water dispute. In mains, they have already asked you from Kaveri. But now we can see every month, one or the other river dispute is going to the central government. And the central government has also planned that rather than having multiple tribunals for different rivers, we will be having only one tribunal for all the rivers where the judges will be segregated or different benches will be there within the tribunal. So my point to you is, this year 2 things are important from the river dispute point of view. Interstate rivers is one, and the second important thing is drainage from geography point of view. Almost all the major rivers is in news. So please try to ensure that you are trying to read these rivers and drainage system carefully. Whether it is Indus, Ganga, Yamuna, Brahmaputra, Barak River, whether it is Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna because of the Pattasima project, or whether it comes to Kaveri, Narmada, Sauni project. So everything is important. So guys, please try to ensure that this year in Indian geography, drainage, you are focusing as much as possible, right? So after this, let's move quickly to the next topic. In Jan, every year, one important thing is with respect to Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, which was launched in 2013, in memory of Gandhiji's written in 1915 on Jan 9th. This year, the theme was redefined engagement with Indian diaspora. Least possibility they may ask you, but sometimes UPSC may ask you themes at that time. Rather than thinking what exactly it is, it just takes 2 minutes or 1 minute to remember it. Not to read, but to remember. So just spend some 1 or 2 minutes to ensure that you're going through this particular theme, right? And it is very important for us to look at the Portugal Prime Minister who was there at that time in India. He also said that he's happy to be part of Indian diaspora, and he tried to enrich relations between India and Portugal. So, least possibility they may ask you, Prime Minister, who exactly he is, Antonio Costa. But in state services they may ask you. But when it comes to UPSC, what is important for us is we have to look at India, Portugal, or in geography through maps. When we are actually looking, we have to look at the Iberian Peninsula properly once, right? And the second important issue is actually with respect to Republic Day, where we invited the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. He's from UAE, and one important fact that you need to remember with respect to UAE is that it is the second largest importer and exporter from India, right? It's very, very important for us to look at this. For India, UAE is the second largest exporter country, and from where we import as well, it is second. So some factual information about UAE is also required, and this we will be seeing in geography through maps. Then the next important issue is actually with respect to some of the African regional organizations. India's renewed interest in Africa has made us to be conscious about the happenings in Africa, and India is planning to have good relations with most of the powerful countries in Africa. There are several regional organizations within Africa, and within these regional organizations there are certain countries which have a significant role. India is trying to reach out to these powerful African countries in almost all these regional groupings. So one, there can be a question about those regional groupings, or second, they may ask a question about the African Union itself. Every month we are seeing some or the other important international affairs. This we can actually observe some of the important things from Africa and African Union as well. The first one is Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. It is a free trade area with 20 member states stretching from Libya to Swaziland, almost on the eastern side, northern side and eastern side. In a stretch, you can see some 20 countries which are actually part of this COMESA. It's a common market. It was formed in December 1994, and in 2008, it included members of East African Community and the Southern African Development Community. They may ask you, consider the following statements with respect to COMESA. COMESA is one of the major trade area in Africa. Within all the regional organizations, COMESA is very, very important. And it's very important for us to look when it was formed. which are the countries. They will not ask you about those 20 countries for sure, but they may ask you. It also includes members of East African Community and the Southern African Development Community. Remember guys, Africa is one area from where less questions are asked by UPSC. But this government has shown a renewed interest in Africa. And Chinese increasing role in Africa has made the world community to think about Africa. And it's time for us to learn about Africa as much as possible. The next important thing that we need to see about Africa is African Union. It is a continental union consisting of almost all the 55 countries on the African continent. It was established on 26th May 2001 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and launched on 9th July 2002. These dates are not required, place is important, or you may remember 2001 and 2002. With the aim of replacing the Organization of African Unity. Earlier, there was Organization of African Unity and this was removed. And it was replaced with African Union, which they wanted it to be similar to European Union. Right? So this factual information about African Union is important. Then in this slide, the 3 places that you see is important from geography through maps. And it's important for us to know about certain factual information about this. The first one is actually with respect to Chagos Archipelago, which is actually closer to Mauritius, and UK has claims over it. UK has reached out to India and it has asked India to actually intervene and help to resolve the dispute. India has said that it has to be discussed bilaterally. UK has said that if this island dispute, which is closer to Mauritius in Indian Ocean, is cleared, then India and UK can have good naval relations or security relations in this region. And closer to this Chagos Archipelago, you also have Diego Garcia, which is a US military base. Earlier it was part of UK and it is said that UK has given this to United States, and the US military base is here mainly because every country needs these bases in Indian Ocean, as good amount of trade of all the countries occurs in this region, and whoever can control this, then it is easy for them to control the rest of the world. Then the third major issue is actually with respect to Crimea. Crimea is a small place or territory which is actually attached to Ukraine, and it is present in Black Sea. When you actually open your atlas and look at Crimea, then you actually understand that there is a place by name Sevastopol, which is actually an important place of Crimea, and this was actually given to Russia. Earlier, Crimea was part of Russia, and when Ukraine was part of USSR, Crimea was actually given to Ukraine. Later, it is said that Ukraine had rights over Crimea after Soviet Union disintegration. And now, as Ukraine wanted to join European Union against the wishes of Russia, we actually tried to understand that Russians took Crimea completely. There was a referendum and Russia took Crimea completely. When Russia took Crimea through referendum, European Union and United States supported the Ukraine, whereas some political parties in Ukraine got support from Russia, and they said Crimea can be actually part of Russia. Because of all this, Ukraine is important, countries surrounding Ukraine is important, Black Sea is important. Lot of questions can come about Black Sea itself, and given the one belt, one road of China, it's very, very important for us to look at the geography of all these places carefully. As I have told you repeatedly, From geography through maps point of view, these three issues are very, very important. So please try to read these issues in your atlas as much as possible and as clearly as possible. Right? So let's quickly move to the next topic, that is actually green bonds. Green bonds are similar to some bonds issued by the government. For example, whenever Indian state requires any money, RBI prints the bonds and it gives the bonds to the banks, and RBI takes the money from these banks and it is given back to the government. The same way, whenever you are talking about any companies also, whenever they want to establish, whenever they want investments, we would have read about in IPOs, right? The same way, even green bonds are actually released by the companies which actually thinks of financing green projects, that is whichever is environment friendly. Such projects can be for renewable energy, clean transportation, sustainable water management, all this. It is said that even masala bonds, which are actually associated with rupee dominated bonds in foreign countries, can also be issued for these green bonds, and this is actually discussed. Green bonds is very, very important from economy point of view, so please try to see that carefully. And some information with respect to green bonds in India. In 2007, green bonds were launched by few development banks such as European Investment Bank and World Bank. And in 2013, corporates also have started giving it. In India, Yes Bank was the first bank to come out with an issue worth rupees 1000 crore in 2015. So this can be asked, right? So first point where they may ask you, first green bonds were launched in 2007. And the second one in India, it is Yes Bank, ICICI Bank or something, right? So it's important for you to look at this. There is something called as blue bonds also within this. Blue bonds are those similar to green bonds, but in blue bonds for water resilient technologies. Usually the green bonds are issued, right? So please try to go through these bonds carefully. Then Climate Bonds Initiative, there is a group, international investor focused NGO, which is actually planning to collect as much as 2 billion. Some say they have plans to collect till trillions of dollars from these bond market so that they can actually fund for projects related to climate change, right? So these issues are important from economy point of view. Then from India, one governance, especially when it comes to power, one of the major sector which has seen huge reforms recently is 24/7 power for all. The power ministry has successfully worked. It may be with respect to Uday scheme, it may be with respect to Ujala, which is actually associated with LED bulbs, it may be with respect to Deen Dayal Upadhyay, Gramin Jyoti Yojana, and integrated power development scheme, where a national grid will be formed to ensure that not only non-renewable energy, but also renewable energy sources can be used from these grids. And we need to understand what is this 24/7 power for all. Whenever you open Facebook, you can actually see that please sign a petition to support Piyush Goyal for his 24/7 power for all. Apart from Uttar Pradesh, almost all the states in the countries have actually signed this 24/7 power for all, where the focus is on providing electricity throughout the country. By when? By 2019. It is a joint initiative of the central government and a state government. What is it? What it tries to do is, say for example, there is a nuclear power project which is associated with a particular state, and if that state wants to enlarge it, if they want to go for other forms of production, other renewable energy sources as well, then the power ministry from the central government will help that, whether it is with respect to technology or gaining access to funds as well. When this 24/7 power for all came, when the thought process actually came, one of the major issues was the state discoms were not functioning effectively, they were in debt. To remove this, the Uday scheme was actually launched. And also to ensure that there is huge wastage of power. When we actually look at most of the developed countries, the wastage they have reduced a lot. And in India, one of the good methods to ensure that the electricity bill is reduced and at the same time power consumption is reduced and also savings happens in power sector, they went for Ujala, which is also a very good scheme which has been successful. Then through DDU GJY and integrated power development scheme, we have actually planned to reach out to almost all the places. So by 2019, we are planning to provide electricity to almost all the villages in the country. And other important thing which may be asked is actually with respect to whether electricity is a state subject, concurrent subject or central subject. It is completely in concurrent subject. So both the central government and the state government can actually have some role in providing electricity for all, right? So least possibility they may ask you a question, but about 24/7 power for all, there can be a question for sure. As in every forum, the power ministry and also the government is actually talking about this. We have also seen some apps with respect to live things where you will be able to see which villages are electrified have also been released by the government. So power ministry is very, very important for us. Please try to go through this carefully. Then the next important one is actually with respect to small finance banks. These are niche banks which are actually focusing on certain demographic population, where they actually look at certain areas where the banking sector has not reached. In those areas, both deposit taking and lending activities are done. A minor difference with respect to this, when we compare it with microfinance institutions, is that microfinance institution focuses mainly on lending, but this focuses on deposit taking as well. And this is actually recommended, this was recommended by Nachiket Moore Committee on Financial Inclusion, where they said that it is important for India to ensure that the banking sector goes to remote areas, then only it is possible for us to ensure financial inclusion throughout the country. And for that we have seen Jan Dhan Yojana and all. Even small finance banks has one step, or they are also planning to move towards this. Individuals and professionals who are having 10 years of experience in banking sector is actually eligible to set up this with a minimum paid up capital of 100 crores. So after that, they can actually go for this deposit taking and lending. So these are some of the main points which they have to think before setting up small finance bank as given by RBI. The guidelines of RBI for small finance banks can be asked. Then the next important issue from mains point of view is the cold start doctrine, where we'll be taking Pakistan, the border problem, and in detail we'll be explaining how exactly border management, especially with Pakistan, can be done with the help of the cold start doctrine. But in prelims, they may ask you what exactly is cold start doctrine. In simple terms, if I have to explain you, take the case of the parliament attack in India. As soon as there was parliament attack in India, there was some time given for the cabinet discussion, and then they spoke with the military, and then the forces were moved towards the border. During this time, when the world community came to know that there can be a war between India and Pakistan, then we usually observe that our country will be pressurized by these world community to stop war. So whenever we say cold start doctrine, if any such event occurs and if India comes to know that there are certain terrorist hideouts which are actually present across the border, then we can actually go for surgical strikes. But for that, the army has to be ready. There should be a specialized team. They should have required equipments. And when everything is ready, whenever anything of this sort happens, before the international pressure would fall on the government, they can react. And at the same time, you should be careful that Pakistan is actually a nuclear country. When you have a nuclear country, when you go for any such attacks, high possibility that they may use nuclear weapons against us. So at that point of time, in this cold start doctrine, they say that the action should be taken in such a way that within a short span of time, when we go hit and come back, the problem that we have created or the attack that we have made is not huge enough for Pakistan to think of a nuclear attack against India. So here it tries to solve two things. One, it creates a fear in Pakistan mindset that there can be surgical strikes continuously because there is a team which is already there. So whenever they need to place any terrorist closer to the border, then they have to think twice. And the second important thing is, when India acts against this, we will not be criticized globally because our action has not triggered a nuclear war. So this is actually your cold start doctrine, right? It's very, very important for you to actually look at this. Then the next important issue is actually with respect to Kyoto Protocol. When we actually read Kyoto Protocol, it's basics in environment and ecology, as you are aware. But what is this year, or why we need to go back to these basics this year is, Indian government, especially the Union Cabinet, has ratified, has agreed that we will try to ensure that the Kyoto Protocol commitments from 2013 to 20, which we had not said we would be abiding by, now the Union Cabinet has said that fine, we will agree with this, because through lot of measures, National Action Plan on Climate Change, we have seen we have improved our renewable energy sources and we have reduced emitting carbon dioxide as much as possible as well. So because of all this, India has now agreed that yes, we will be stopping excess emission of carbon dioxide. This is one important thing that we need to remember. The second thing is, whenever we look at Kyoto Protocol, we try to understand that there is something called as Annex 1 countries, Annex 2 countries, where there is some deadline for these countries, and based on these deadlines and commitments, the countries are divided into Annex 1 and Annex 2. And within these countries, whenever they want to go for reducing carbon dioxide, there is something called as clean development mechanism. There is something called as joint implementation. And there is also something called as carbon trading. In carbon trading, what happens is, if India has been told that you can emit 50 tons of carbon dioxide and India is emitting only 40 tons, remaining 10 tons can be sold. That is carbon trading. Second one is clean development mechanism, where you have a developed country like Germany which may emit a lot of carbon dioxide. But it is not possible for Germany to reduce carbon dioxide emission. So what Germany says, Germany will transfer some renewable energy technology to country like India. And it says that See, if I had not given this energy or this technology to India, then India would have burnt this amount of coal. So I have actually helped India to reduce carbon dioxide emissions of this much. So, as I cannot reduce in my country, I am actually reducing it in another country. When an Annex 1 country does it in Annex 2 country, we call it clean development mechanism. Then the third important thing is joint implementation. That is, when you have two developed countries, they both come together and they try to say that for two countries, when we consider, together we have to emit only 100 tons. So somehow we will have projects in such a way that together we will release only 100 tons. So if Annex 1 country is helping another Annex 1 country in offsetting certain carbon dioxide emissions, then we actually call it to be joint implementation. All these points are important. Please, whenever you are revising your environment and ecology, especially Kyoto Protocol, try to go through this carefully once. Then the next important issue from environment and ecology point of view is about the olive Ridley turtles, which were actually found on the shore of Hope Island of the Coringa Wildlife Sanctuary off the coast of Kakinada. They may ask you, Hope Islands is present where? Andhra Pradesh. And the wildlife sanctuary which is closer to this is Coringa. And here we actually saw olive Ridley turtles. This olive Ridley turtles are actually present in highest number near Bhitarkanika Wildlife Sanctuary, Gahir Mata, Odisha, right? Where you actually see world's largest mass nesting site. They are vulnerable species. Which of the following are vulnerable? And if they have included olive Ridley, it's very important for you to look at it. One of the specialization about this olive Ridley turtles is actually about synchronized mass nesting or aribidas. That is, there will be a particular season when all these olive Ridley turtles come together on land and they go for mass nesting. So this is the peculiarity of this turtles. So some information from environment and ecology point of view, if they ask you, it's important for you to. Then the next important thing is actually about Hakki Habba, which is celebrated in Karnataka. Hakki means birds, birds festival. It's a 3-day bird festival held at Daroji Sloth Bear Sanctuary near Hampi in Ballari district. They may ask you about the festival or they may ask you about the sanctuary itself. There are some sanctuaries whose name we won't be reading much because neither in our atlas nor when we actually look at some of the major sanctuaries we don't come across these. But whenever something of this happens, high possibility that they may ask you a question with respect to that sanctuary as well. So please go through this carefully. Similarly, another wetlands which was important this year was with respect to Polachira wetlands near Kollam in Kerala. Right? So please go through these factors. Next, you have in science and tech something called as Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. It is actually a global alliance of governments, intergovernmental institutions, that is international institutions like WHO, health specialists and NGOs across the world. They have come together and they have told that we have to identify certain diseases and we have to produce medicines for these diseases. So philanthropists, everyone is coming and they are actually investing money in those diseases which are actually troubling the people. So this is Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. So they may ask you, consider the following statement with respect to this, and it is only government grouping or it is government NGOs and all. So they may ask you something like this. So it's important for you to look at this issue. Then from culture point of view, there is something called as Tangalia weaving, which is already given GI status, and it is associated with Dangasia community of Gujarat. So they may ask you, Tangalia weaving is associated with which community? Match the following, right? Then the Corruption Perception Index is actually released by Transparency International, and according to that, India is ranking 79th among 168 countries. Important. But what is more important is which organization releases it is important. Then you have something called as Target Olympic Podium Scheme. Once we did not perform well in Olympics in 2020 and 24, to increase the chances of medals, this Target Olympic Podium Scheme is actually launched by the government to ensure that we identify the people who have the talent, and for them required facilities are being provided. Then the most important one, high possibility they may ask you a question, is with respect to OCI, where the Prime Minister has actually requested all the NRIs to actually transfer themselves into OCI. So PIO and OCI has been merged after 2015. Till now there is not even a single question about the OCI after the merger. High possibility they may ask you about this year. So please, in your polity, please try to go through what exactly is OCI. What are the conditions under which you can apply for OCI? If you are from Bangladesh or Pakistan, you can't. Before 26 Jan 1950, if you could have become a citizen, then you can. Then if you are part of acquired territory of India after 1947, then you are. So there are certain things which are important for us to look, and then you have to see whether they can contest elections. If you see OCI people with this card, doesn't mean they are citizens. It is not dual citizenship. We know that if someone has voluntarily taken any country citizenship, then they won't be getting India's citizenship. They can't contest in elections. So these kind of things are very, very important for us to look whenever it comes to OCI, right? So please go through this carefully. Then Jeevan Rekha is actually a e-health project launched by Kerala government with the help of World Bank. Jeevan Rekha, very, very important. They may ask you, it's a joint initiative between whom and it's associated with what. And in Gujarat, we actually have a gift city, Gujarat International Financial Tech City, right? Where we have got India's first international stock exchange. And it is said that it is technologically very strong and it has some of the best facilities available. So it's very, very important for us to look at this as well. Then Andhra Pradesh, through Arogya Raksha scheme, has become the first state to adopt health for all vision of WHO. Not only Andhra Pradesh, even the central government plans for providing health for all, and Andhra Pradesh is the first state. So they may ask you which is the first state to adopt health for all vision, and also they may ask you about the program. At last, we need to see that there is something called as orphan drug policy. Orphan drugs are those drugs which are developed to treat rare diseases. There are a few diseases on earth which affect 1 in few lakhs of people. Or you may say maximum there will be 10 to 50,000 people who are suffering from this. No industry or no biopharmaceutical sector is actually interested in investing money to produce these because they become very costly and they will not make much profits because of this. So the state governments, many countries have said that they will go for orphan drug policy where they will encourage investments in this, and if any such disease is occurred and if the drug is costly, then the state will ensure that it will purchase it and it will actually provide it to the people. So this is what we call orphan drug policy, and Karnataka is the first state to launch rare disease and orphan drug policy. So guys, these are the important topics from Jan point of view. Other important topics whichever is recurring from Jan onwards, and if it is covered in weekly magazines, I have not got in detail with those topics as well. Right? So I have spent a lot of time in actually telling you which are the important issues, but now it's your duty to ensure that you're going through the basic books once again, or revise at least now immediately when you look at this. Pause, go back and read the particular topic. Once you have already heard, now what you do second time when you're revising, open polity book, history book, geography book, immediately read what is the additional information that I have told you. The reason for this is whenever students, they go back to their basic books and read about that particular topic, they try to read similar information there as well. So that may actually help them to revise the content and also answer any question associated with it. I can actually copy paste whatever is there in Lakshmikant, but that will not help you to open the book and read some additional information associated with that. That is the reason we ensure that we keep telling you regularly what exactly you have to read, right? So guys, if there is any issue, please write to us, and for Feb current affairs within 2 to 3 days we will be launching it as well, so that we will be giving you enough time for you to revise them carefully again and again, right? Thank you guys, thanks for watching.